Hey everyone, today we are going to paint two ocean-themed paintings. I have my watercolor paper split into two sections, so we are going to work on one painting first and then our second one. Our first painting is going to be a sea turtle swimming in the water with a couple of tropical leaves bordering our painting. So the very first thing we are going to do is we are going to grab our pencil and we are going to lightly sketch out where we want our sea turtle to be. So to draw our sea turtle, we are going to make kind of like a heart shape, but instead of curving inward on the top, we're just going to keep it nice and flat. You could also think of it like a long oval with a pointed little tail at the bottom. And then we're going to kind of give it a border on the inside. And then for the head, we're just going to connect the head with a little neck, tiny, I guess short, thick neck. And then we're going to kind of repeat the same shape for the head. Just maybe less of a little bit of a point, but kind of the same body shape as the head, just different direction. And then for the fins, we are going to do some wide, I don't know, weird circle ovalish shapes. Do that on either side. And then for the feet, they're going to kind of curve and then come into like a fin shape. And it's okay if you're having to like erase and then kind of rearrange your shapes. Not every time you do this, the first time it's going to come out perfect and symmetrical. So it's okay if you're having to mess with it a little bit. All right, right now we're going to leave our sea turtle looking like this. I might tweak it a little bit as we keep on going through the painting process, but we are going to draw in our leaves next. And we are going to, once again, make like a heart shape. So have that point, and then it's going to curve. And then for this leaf, we're really not going to see the tip. And then I'm just going to draw a line right down the middle. And then I'm going to create little curved indents. Just like that. And I'm going to repeat that on the same side. They don't have to match the other side either. All right, and that is one of our tropical leaves. And then I'm going to do another one kind of poking out on this side. And then do that line down the middle. And then this one can just fit one little curved section. And then there, and then maybe just a little bit right there. I think I might add one more. Kind of poking out right there. And then another, well, those curved sections. All right, I like that. And then I'm going to do another one right here. I will have timestamps below if you want to jump ahead to that other painting you saw in the thumbnail. So you can head down to that description if you want to just be able to skip any steps or go back if you missed something or need anything. I will also have all of these pictures over on my blog still so that you can just take your time and sketch things out or really practice with a specific step if you want to head over there and check that out as well. Okay, so now that we have our sketch in place, I'm going to take my pencil and I'm just going to lightly erase everything so I can still see my main sketch, but those pencil lines aren't going to be super sharp. Another great technique, and I've done that on some of my other tutorials, is to draw all of this out on a separate sheet of paper and then transfer it over with just, charcoal on the back of your sketch or with transfer paper, because that can save you a lot of time and you don't have to worry about possibly ruining your watercolor paper, because if you erase too much on it, it can really hurt your paper. Okay, now we can begin the painting process. All right, we are going to start by painting in our water. So I am going to grab my size 12 round brush. That size 12 round brush, I'm going to take some clean water on my brush, and I'm just going to start applying that onto our paper, avoiding what we have drawn. So I'm going to try to avoid my turtle for the most part, try to avoid the leaves. Those little curved sections we drew into the leaves, we want those little indents to kind of, we want the water to be seen in that area. So it's okay to put some water in there to let it seep in. But just take your time filling up all of that space. You don't want the water really pooling in any areas, but you do want to make sure that you have enough water to where it's not going to start drying on you while we're working on another section of our painting. Okay, so now I'm going to grab my palette. I already have my indigo on this extra palette of mine, and I'm going to take a light mixture of my indigo, and I'm going to start dropping that in, letting it seep around into that wet area. You can kind of see it moving into the water. That's the best part of working wet on wet, because if it isn't wet, it's not going to go there unless you put the paint there. So it's really nice working wet on wet if you're not using masking fluid and if you're not wanting it to get into a sketch. You can use masking fluid to cover up your sketch, but I thought we could just do it this way and see how it goes. Let me know in the comments which you were more excited to paint. Is it the sea turtle we're painting now, or is it the beach landscape we are going to be painting next? So like I said, I'm filling in these little indents right here. That's part of the leaf, is that section of the leaf is open. So while this is still wet, we are actually going to take a little bit more of that indigo, and we are going to just mix it into that light wash we already had, and we are going to take that darker, more concentrated color, and we're just going to kind of tap that into the edges and let that just be a little bit darker and let it seep in. So again, you want to do this while it is still wet. All right, I'm cleaning off my brush, and I'm going to blend it in to that wet area so there's not a harsh line. bringing that color in over here. I kind of forgot about it. Okay, I'm going to take a little bit of my Viridian Hue Green, and I'm going to just kind of bring that in and kind of mix it as I paint in random sections. So I just feel like the ocean has that bluish green color in it, and I feel like we needed to add it in while everything was still wet and gave it like a natural blend. All right, now we're gonna let this dry, and then we will come back and we will keep working on our turtle and on our leaves. So now that everything is dried, I'm going to kind of redraw out my turtle just a little bit. It kind of got a little deformed in the painting process. And I'm just going to reshape it up, and with the layers we're going to add to the sea turtle, it can cover up any paint that was underneath all of this, that's going to be underneath it. So I'm just going to redefine the shell, make it a little bit more round again. I just like to give myself these little bit of guidelines so that I'm not going to get lost when I start going back in with the paint. For the most part, these stayed okay. Okay, so there we go. There's our main shape of our turtle again, just kind of reshaped a little bit. I might bring out this shell just a bit more. Okay, so now I'm going to take my large brush again, and I have a really, really light wash of green mixed up. I used my Viridian Hue Green as well as my Sap Green, and I'm just going to apply this super light coat to fill in the base of my turtle. And we are going to use this color everywhere that our turtle is. So just fill in that entire sketch. This is an easy step. We don't have to worry about detail. We can just paint in this entire section of the sea turtle. And then I'm going to take some darker green that I had already mixed up. The same color, just more concentrated, which means less water and more paint. And I'm just going to kind of drop that in right here in the center of the sea turtle on its back, so like its shell, kind of giving it a little bit of a pattern. We are going to sharpen things up, so don't worry. And then I'm going to do it right on the top of its head. Okay, and then we are going to add just a little bit more sap green to this green paint mixture. I'm sorry that I have it off screen. And we're going to fill in our leaves. So again, this is a really easy step. We can just completely fill in what we sketched out earlier. I'm not doing anything fancy with the colors, and just doing a nice even wash. And if you want, you can switch to a smaller brush for this step, if you would like. And I'm going to come over to this leaf. And just like that for those. Fix this section right here. I'm going to do the exact same thing over here. Okay, and now we are going to let our leaves and our turtle completely dry, and then we can come back and add some more detail. So now we are going to take our size 2 round brush, and it comes to a nice sharp tip, and we're going to take a really thick wash of brown paint. So I took a lot of brown paint, a little bit of black paint, and then just a little bit of water. And now with that color, we are going to outline and give some detail to our sea turtle. So I'm just going to start with the shell. I'm just going to follow along. Where we want that. Just like that. And then I'm just going to kind of connect very loosely, just give little dividers between these little splotches that we created. So I'm not making any like perfectly straight or connected lines, just kind of doing very loose. And then I'm going to go back to that really rich brown color, and I am going to give our turtle a border. So a lot of turtles will have a pattern, and then it looks like there is a thicker border around their shell. This is what I'm going to do with this brown color. Just kind of fill in the area around all of the pattern we just created. And then we're going to go back to just using the tip. So it's going to give it a nice border, but it's not going to make it look too perfect like a drawing. And then I'm going to go back in, I'm going to grab a little bit more of that Viridian Hue green. Just going to start adding a little bit more to our little sections on the turtle. While everything is wet, I'm not going to be too concerned if things kind of touch or bleed into each other. Just kind of layering it up to give our sea turtle a fun pattern. Just like that, and I'm going to take that same color and I'm going to fill in the fins. As well as our head up here. And then with the head, I'm going to clean off my brush. I'm just going to pick up a little bit of that paint just to make sure it's not too smooth and perfect. And do the same thing with the fins. Just kind of pick up a little bit of the paint. Some of it's pretty dry. And then I'm going to go back into the leaves. Just going to kind of add a shadowing area on the left side, and then I'm going to blend it in so it's not too sharp. I'm just going to go from that, take clean water from the right side over, just kind of blend it together again so it's not super sharp, but to where you definitely can tell there's a darker separation. I'm going to do the same thing to this leaf. Around, and then take that clean water and blend it into that lighter side. And then with this leaf, I'm going to do it a little different just because it's clearly underneath right here. So I'm going to add a little bit of a shadow there, and then I'm going to add right there, and then I'm going to blend it out. Right, and then we're going to do the same thing over here. Kind of brighten it up, the little pattern that we created. And then do the same thing here. Just basically where I put that brown, I'm adding the white either slightly on it or right next to it. And just to kind of brighten things up. And then along the border, I'm adding those white lines. So I'm just gonna fix up my turtle's head a little bit more. I just can't decide if I like it or not. So I'm just gonna go back in with that same color and just fill it in. Just kind of making a little bit more round. A little bit more of that viridian hue. Just gonna darken it up just a little bit. And then what I'm going to do, because I know that turtles have a pattern on their head, I'm going to take just a little drop of water and I'm going to plop it in the turtle's head. And then we are going to let that dry and we are going to see what pattern we get and we are going to work with that. Next, we are going to take our small detail brush and we are going to fill it up with that teal blue paint as well as a lot of water, and we are going to splatter it around our sea turtle. But first, we want to make sure our sea turtle is covered so that the splatter doesn't get on top of it. And I'm also going to try to avoid the leaves as well. So once you have your brush loaded with that teal blue paint, just splatter it lightly all around that sea turtle. After the splatter completely dried, I took some clean water on my brush and I decided I was going to blend out the sea turtle's shell. So I just took that clean water and I first went around the brown border that we gave our sea turtle and I blended that out, kind of smoothing out those sharp white lines we did with our gel pen. And then I cleaned my brush off again and I used that clean water to blend out the center of the sea turtle. I didn't do it to where it all mixed, I just did it to where it kind of faded the color just a little bit. So you don't want to take away all of the detail, you just want to kind of blur the detail just a little bit. And then you want this to completely dry, and then we are done with this first sea turtle painting. So now we are going to move on to our second seascape painting. So you'll see I got a little bit of blue paint from this painting over here, but it is okay, we can still work around that because it's going to be the same sort of color palette for this painting. So to start, we are going to take our pencil and we are just going to draw in where we want our wave lines to be. So I'm just going to start at the top and just add a really wavy, loose line, kind of coming up to a little bit of a point right there. And we're going to come down a little bit farther and just kind of do another wavy, curvy line. And then we're going to do one more right here, same idea. And then we are going to leave it like that. So the one big thing is you want part of that wavy line to be coming down or forward toward you. That's going to be the biggest part of seeing those waves come toward us. But now we can start the painting process. So I have my size 12 round brush again. I'm going to take some clean water and I'm going to fill this entire painting with that clean water. And then I've already mixed up a brown sandy color off to the side. I'm going to add a little bit more yellow ochre into it. So I'm just taking a little bit of brown and then adding just a little bit of yellow ochre to give it that sandy brownish yellow color. And I am going to fill in this bottom section right down here with that color and just come right up to that line. And just drying off my brush and just kind of smoothing out the paint color a little bit so it's not too bold. I'm going to get a little bit more of that yellow ochre, mix it in with my brown, just kind of add a little bit more darker pigment to the bottom right there, and then I tapped my brush off and then I can just blend out those colors. All right, and then while this is still wet, we're going to keep adding in our blue color. So I'm going to take my light cobalt blue with a little bit of my teal blue added in, and we are going to add that to this first section. And we're just following those lines, and I'm going to clean my brush off really well because I don't want this yellow and blue to make too much of a green color. I just want them to kind of very lightly blend together. And then I'm going to take a little bit more of that teal blue and add it to that paint mixture, and we're going to fill in that next layer. And then once again, we are going to clean off our brush. We're going to blend these two sections together. Like that. And then finally, we're going to take even more of that teal blue. So a really thick, dark mixture, a lot of paint, and a little bit of water, and we're going to add that to that top section. Again, we just keep with those lines. And then once again, I'm cleaning my brush off and add a little bit more blue right down here. Clean my brush off again, kind of dry it and smooth out those transition points just a little. Up here as well. Up here looked like it got a little bit too like stiff. So with a dry brush, I can kind of blend and also kind of redefine where those waves are. We do want the waves to be a little bit on the lighter side, showing that separation. All right, so we're gonna leave it like this and we're gonna let it completely dry, and then we can come back and add some more detail. Okay, and now that our painting is completely dry, I am going to take my white gel pen and we are going to draw in our wave splashes. And that is really gonna break up these waves and just help it have that definition and really bring the detail into this painting. So I'm just going to start by kind of repainting in that loose line section. Make it kind of thick so you can really see that white. And you can use white gouache, white watercolor paint for this. If you use white watercolor paint, it needs to be straight out of the tube to be this pigmented and not fade. So there's our first line, and then you're just going to kind of create really thin circle-ish motion lines to kind of create that wave and just kind of keep them a little bit broken. not perfect little shapes. Just kind of like little circles piling on top of each other. And just varying the different shapes and sizes, kind of just like the little bubbles that pop up off the wave. Like a large one right here. Some quick lines. And then we're going to add a little bit of a darker or thicker white area right here. Just like that. I'm going to kind of fix this area. I'm loving it. And the best part about using the white gel pen, you can take your brush and you can blend out any little mistakes you don't like. And it just picks right up using just a little bit of water. I'm just going to get a little, probably too tedious with this section that I'm fixing. You do not need to re-add paint like I am. In this paint color, I've realized with fixing things that if you reactivate it with water, it's going to look a little bit more pigmented. So we're just going to let that dry, and you're going to see how it's going to fade in really nicely. And now we're going to come down and we're going to do the same thing right down here. So just with that white gel pen, we're going to follow those lines we drew earlier. And right where it dips, we're going to make it that thickest section of the white. All right, and then we are going to, once again, draw in those little circles, little bubbles. I'm just going to read back over some areas. This is definitely the lighter section, and I can really tell how my white is just kind of fading away. If it really looks faded when I'm done, I might take some of my white acrylic paint and sharpen some stuff up. Right, just like that. And then for our final one, we are going to do it right down in the yellow. And then once again, we're making those little circle lines. All right, so right down here, I'm not really seeing it too well. So I am going to take my white acrylic paint, and I'm going to squeeze that out onto my palette right over here, just a little bit of it. And I'm going to take a slightly damp brush, and using the tip, I'm going to take that paint. I can just use that to get this nice white area to actually show up a little bit more than my white gel pen was able to do. If you need to, take just a little bit of water to make the paint a little bit more smooth. All right, and then we are going to take a lot of that white acrylic paint and we are going to splatter it. First of all, let's make sure this section is covered. So I'm just going to take some scrap pieces of paper I have laying around, just make sure that area is covered, and then again I'm going to take that white acrylic paint on my brush with a lot of water added in, and I'm going to splatter that right along each of these sections to give that splash look of the waves. And then I'm going to use it to kind of sharpen up these areas just a little bit. I think those look really good. So I'm going to leave that. Go down here just one more time. Putting a lot of pressure on my brush and bringing it back up. All right, and there you have 2 ocean-themed watercolor paintings. I hope you enjoyed painting these 2 watercolor tutorials with me today. If you did, please subscribe to this channel and give this video a thumbs up. Here are a few more watercolor tutorials you may also like.